Li Changshu was lost inside a strange realm. He could sense the changes in his environment, and control the rough direction of where the monster fish was swimming. Yet he could not wake up. He did not sense the passing of time while he was lost in this esoteric Tao realm. However, a bit of his immortal sense continued to drift around the monster fish, so as to provide him with timely warnings. The monster fish continued to swim westwards, and 5 months passed. One day, 2 huge metal spikes reached into the ocean and pierced through the fish. Li Changshu was alarmed. However, as he did not sense any danger, he did not leave that abstruse Tao realm. He waited quietly at the back of the fish and continued to experience and understand that Tao realm. In actual fact, he was unable to leave even if he wanted to. The monster fish, with Li Changshu inside, was dragged by 2 boats onto the coast and then into a relatively large village by a group of strong and fit young people who wore primitive clothes. With a rough scan of the outside with his immortal sense, Li Changshu discovered that the majority of the people there were mortals, with only a few of them capable of completing qi refinement and soul formation. He sensed his body sliding out of the fish the moment it was sliced open. Then, a dramatic scene played out. These fishermen treated Li Changshu as the sea god and started prostrating and dancing in celebration around him. They even started a celebration banquet that lasted for several days, while putting him on a pedestal. After all, when he slid out from the fish, his body shone with immortal light and was completely dirt-free. He looked very heroic. Li Changshu remained in this state for the next 2 months, while these fishermen treated him as their god. A young girl around 13 years old was selected to be the maidservant to guard by Li Changshu's side day and night. Another 2 weeks passed before Li Changshu finally managed to absorb all insights and break free from that abstruse realm. While he closed his eyes and checked his insides for a while, morning arrived. The young girl in the adjacent room woke up. Upon hearing the light footsteps, Li Changshu opened his eyes and stood up, prepared to thank the young girl before quickly leaving this place. Li Changshu spoke the moment the young girl lifted her leg and was about to cross the threshold. "Thank you, me." The door curtain opened, and an arm as thick as Li Changshu's thigh reached inside. Li Changshu blinked. Did he sense wrongly? It was a young man and not a young lady? He immediately changed the address. "Thank you, mister, for saving me." "Eh?" A figure entered the room. First was a beautiful face, then a short, fit body and 3,000 flowy black hair strands. The young girl spoke in a hoarse voice. "Hey! Why did you wake up, Sir Immortal?" "Immortal?" Li Changshu took note of this detail and started to feel wary. According to how the fisherman before that had been addressing him, shouldn't he be called Sea God instead? To avoid too much trouble, after Li Changshu thanked her, he left a pile of gold and silver before he secretly left without saying goodbye while that young lady went to shout for someone. He didn't go far and executed the earth escape over 50 kilometers. He hid in the trunk of a large tree in the oceanside forest and used his immortal senses to scan all over this village. As the saying went, each place has its own way of supporting its own inhabitants. Could this village's water and soil have been mixed with strong medicine? As far as his immortal sense could see, a group of strong men and women were busy everywhere, and they weren't just ordinary strong men and women. They had a kind of indescribable, aristocratic strength. As far as his immortal sense could see, there were men and women with prominent muscles all over their bodies. Each of them had arms nearly as thick as his junior sister's waist, and dozens of kilograms of millstones were rolled around by a few children as toys. Other than a small number of old people and children, most of the people in this village were about the same size as the young lady he had seen earlier. I might be overthinking. This village probably pursues the beauty of muscles. Li Changshu smiled in his heart. When he was observing this village, he vaguely felt his immortal body and primordial spirit that had yet to fully recover. The immortal sense was much better than the spiritual sense. Not only did it have a further detection range, but the images seen were also clearer and more vivid. Before the tribulation transcendence, Li Changshu's spiritual sense could at most detect a range within a few dozens of kilometers. However, all he saw were blurred images, and he could only see clear images within 15 kilometers. Now, it was different, as he could casually release his immortal sense and observe up to 1,000 kilometers away. Just at that moment, even from 500 kilometers away, he could roughly distinguish the two figures wrestling on the forest meadow and their approximate fighting movements. It seemed that they were not fighting there. I don't need to care about these details. Anyway, my detection skills have been greatly enhanced. Li Changshu returned his attention to the village 50 kilometers away. The young lady, who had taken care of him for some time, hurriedly rushed into the wooden house, where he had been staying earlier, with a group of people, and found a pile of gold and silver that he had left on his bed. It had been more than 9 months since he had left the Immortal Du sect, and he could still stay outside for at most 3 or 4 years. After that, his master and the sectarian officers would go looking for him. During this period, I should find an island and enter seclusion. There were still many things to do, and he must now think clearly and arrange his schedule one thing at a time. Naturally, there was no need to mention about recuperating and stabilizing his cultivation realm. He had to find a way to conceal his immortal power and immortal body, and simulate his original mortal Tao body. Since he had chosen to conceal his cultivation level as a trump card in the beginning, he had to stick to that path to the end. If he was suddenly exposed, he would definitely be suspected by the Immortal Du sect's higher-ups. The development of the third version of the Qi-calming turtle-breathing mantra had to be on his schedule. In addition, Li Changshu had to face an awkward fact. Because after he had passed the heavenly tribulation, his strength had taken a big step forward, and he had gained the rumored ascension. This was naturally a good thing, but 1/3 of the defensive methods he relied on before were completely meaningless, and 1/3 of them had their effectiveness greatly diminished. For example, the soft immortal disperser and many poisonous pills had already been a bit useless. When he wasn't powerful enough, the incapacitating agents and poisonous pills were powerful weapons to protect himself. Right now, the poisonous pills were no longer as effective as in making a move on his own. Many poisonous pills, which he had refined to deal with perfected immortals, could only be stored for future uses. Otherwise, he could go to the border of the middle continent and trade them for treasured herbs in the marketplace. The power of that bronze crossbow could be increased according to the user's Dharma powers and immortal power. This offensive weapon that consumed very little immortal power could be kept. Later on, he would use his immortal power to brandish it and develop its potential. Then, he could let the paper dolls use it. The same went for the true Samadhi flames. Their power increased with his strength, and he only needed to replenish his cultivation and condense the immortal fire. The paper doll's mystical abilities needed to be comprehended again, and future paper dolls would have more wonderful uses and power than before. The 5-element escape technique could also be used to enter a whole new realm. The sword array Dharma treasure needed to be brandished again as well. Some powerful talismans that had previously been impossible to draw could now be made. The heavenly precious umbrella could create some more powerful arrays. Wait! After taking a closer look, Li Changshu had many things to do, and 3 or 4 years might not be enough. It was a good idea to first pick the most important ones and upgrade the most commonly used escape techniques. There were priorities, and his life came first. So what even if he had ascended? What could he do after ascending to an immortal? Through immortal ascension, he had become a stronger ant. Ascension had given wings to this ant to fly to the sky. However, he was still a flying ant, only with clearer goals. Age wasn't counted in the primordial world, and it had been countless years since then. Even though the Great Tribulation continued to descend, there were still too many surviving experts. There were the heavenly Tao ancestors, and 6 saints above. There were mighty ancient figures, the 3 schools elders, remnants of mages and demons, experts of the human race, and all kinds of superior beings reincarnating below. Right now, he was not even a third-rate expert, and was not even close to achieving that. The important point was that he was especially poor. His immortal sense captured noises in the distant village, and the sturdy young lady crouched there bawling as she hugged the pile of gold and silver that Li Changshu had left behind. "I wasn't the one who lost the immortal! I didn't sell the immortal either!" Upon seeing her squat on the ground and crying like a child, the group of iron towers and King Kongs around her were still ruthlessly blaming her. "I told you to take care of the sea god. How can you lose sight of such a big one? Oh, did you have to run out and yell for someone? Couldn't you just stand at the window and shout the sea god is awake, the sea god is awake? Why did you have to run around? I told you that the sea god is not an immortal." "Xiongling, don't listen to your father. You can't offend the sea god. Hurry! Take these gold and silver to the village chief's house, lest these things provoke the sea god." Xiang. The surname suited them, the posture of a true bear, one. The group of adults scolded the young girl for a while before they then dispersed. They did not punish the young girl and began to search for their sea god inside and outside the village. Li Changshu continued to observe in secret. This village was somewhat strange, which was also the only reason why Li Changshu would stay 50 kilometers away and didn't leave. There were always demons when things were abnormal, and it was also possible that there was a hidden treasure. Thousands of people in the village relied on fishing and hunting to make a living and lived a full life. The place was in good weather with no natural disasters. As for man-made disasters, a few thousand regular troops from the Mortal Kingdom tribe would not be able to take down this village, let alone those small gangs of bandits and sea pirates. However, the vast majority of the people in this village did not cultivate, and were all mortals, yet they were all as sturdy as young girls, which was somewhat unjustifiable. First of all, their nutrition was definitely not up to par. The people didn't train their muscles deliberately either. Of the several possibilities Li Changshu could think of, the most probable one was that there were special water veins or ingredients, and they were large in quantity. Often, the kind of magical objects that mortals didn't care about would be a treasure for alchemy, blacksmithing, array formation setup, and cultivation. Together with the fact that there were no traces of any foreign cultivators in this place, the few cultivators, who were at the soul formation stage, in the village should be cultivating some sort of defective techniques, which were not uncommon within the human race in the mortal world. Only then did Li Changshu become slightly more interested and decided to stay 50 kilometers away to do some observation. The group of strong people searched the village to no avail. After searching with their utmost best for half a day, an old man cried out in desperation, "The sea god has returned to the big sea!" Therefore, this group of villagers, most of whom had the surname Xiong, returned to the village and began a lively bonfire assembly to celebrate the sea god's return to the sea. After Li Changshu observed for 3 days, he went to secretly check the water source of the place, investigated the food commonly eaten in this village, and searched the nearby 50 kilometers, but did not find any abnormalities. Could it be that they really had an inherited body type? Li Changshu didn't want to spend too much time here and decided to leave since he couldn't find the reason for the abnormality of this place. In the middle of the night, Li Changshu squeezed out from the trunk of the large tree, transformed into a medium-sized fish, and plunged into the warm seawater to find the next place for seclusion. This place was in the southwestern part of the South Continent, and the scope under the influence of the Southern Ocean Dragon Palace. Because the Southern Ocean Dragon Palace was too far from land and not as active as the Eastern Ocean Dragon Palace, this sea was unusually quiet and peaceful. Li Changshu soon found a small deserted island where he entered seclusion. 3 months later, Li Changshu's Dao injuries had completely healed, and his water escape and earth escape had also greatly improved. He had cultivated the true Samadhi flames once again and condensed the immortal fire. 5 months later, the immortal light around Li Changshu, who was sitting in a lotus position in the reef cave, had completely dwindled. His breathing was no longer clear, he had no threatening gaze, and his body's faint fragrance had disappeared. Standing up, he lowered his head and sized up for a while, and his own aura no longer fluctuated in the slightest bit. Walking to the reef side, Li Changshu stood quietly and observed the creature's reactions in the seawater. Previously, because of the immortal's existence, the the fish and shrimps in the sea would dodge. Now that he was standing here, the fish and shrimps in the sea were only alarmed for a little while before they played as usual. After thinking about it, Li Changshu first simulated the aura of the 7th stage of the Void Return Realm. He hid part of it before revealing the aura of the 3rd stage of the Void Return Realm. The 3rd version of the Qi-calming turtle-breathing mantra was a phenomenal success. I'll pass the 2nd version to Lingy when I go back. Exhaling lightly, Li Changshu was in quite a good mood and did not want to waste any more time. He was about to return to the rock cave where he was hiding before to continue his cultivation. He was just about to turn around when a ray of 7-colored precious light suddenly appeared in the northern sky. Li Changshu's immortal sense immediately scanned and discovered that the source of that precious light was the village that the young lady, Xiongling, was from. There was indeed good stuff in that village. However, making such a big commotion would most likely attract the attention of other cultivators, and he might easily fall into danger if he rashly went over there. After some deliberation, Li Changshu took out a paper doll from his sleeve and blew at it. The paper doll shook a few times and slowly came to life. It stretched its small arms and legs and jumped up in Li Changshu's hands before landing on the sea surface. The little paper doll took 2 steps on the seawater and transformed into the figure of a middle-aged Taoist. It caught the 3 storage sacks thrown by Li Changshu, turned around, and disappeared into the seawater. Li Changshu returned to the rock cave and closed his eyes while he put his mind on the paper doll. He put his mind in a very relaxed state. He would pick up treasures if he could. If he had to do more than a pick-up, then he would let the paper doll do it. After all, as his cultivation realm rose, the more advanced the paper doll was, the more laborious it would be to produce it. Since this was the mortal world, it was unlikely that there would be any powerful Dharma treasures. At the border of the South Ocean and the East Ocean, the corner of the island that resembled a large turtle. Fellow Taoists, I'm speaking the truth. On the way back last time, I came across a man who had survived the 9 heavens God-fiend tribulation. I said that he couldn't go through it, but he did. The heavenly punishment even struck this man after his tribulation transcendence, and I felt again that he definitely would not make it, but… Fellow Taoists, guess what happened next? Next to the precious pond, an old Taoist priest was chatting with more than a dozen cultivators of similar Tao cultivations in a lively manner. In the corner under the pond, Aoi regained his original azure dragon form and entrenched at the bottom of the pond without moving. The primordial world was truly terrifying. The nightmare still hadn't subsided, but Aoi took the initiative to request his mother this time to send himself back to the territory of the immortals from the Jie school. That was because Aoi knew that there were some human tribes among the Jie school, so he could observe them and learn from them what the dragon race lacked, especially their craftiness and schemes. The topic of the cultivators at the side of the pond was unwittingly changed to the little dragon at the bottom of the pond. One of them said with a sigh, "The gap at the bottom of the pond has been set up with a restriction. I don't know what exactly this dragon prince finds so bad about our golden turtle island that he actually escaped. It's not unusual for a child not to want to listen to an old man." The old Taoist priest, who was telling the story of encountering the tribulation transcendence just now, laughed and stroked his beard as he said, "Don't worry. As long as we treat this dragon palace's prince well, he will appreciate our kindness and cultivate at ease here." The cultivators nodded their heads in unison. Aoi, who was in the pond, moved his dragon head but ignored them. What was going on? As his immortal sense was disturbed by the precious light from the north, Li Changshu and other paper doll clones approached the village and hid in the treetop of a large tree. Only then could they see the situation inside the village. Hundreds of villagers were gathered around the village gate, where a stage had been set up with several figures dressed in Taoist robes jumping on it. Someone was preaching there. He saw that the source of the precious light was actually a clay statue behind those preachers. Li Changshu smiled in his heart, and the paper dolls transformed into middle-aged men before they jumped off the treetop and left right away. He thought that some kind of treasure was born and thought of going over and picking it up. Nowadays, where could there be so many treasures for him to pick up? If such preaching happened outside the South Continent, It was 80% a propaganda activity conducted by some great sects to recruit disciples. However, if something happened within the South Continent, it would either be money swindling or collecting incense offerings and merit. This was commonly seen. The cultivation level displayed by those preachers were all at the third or fourth stages of the soul formation realm. The old Taoist, who was guarding that 3-foot-tall clay statue, displayed a cultivation level at the peak of the void return realm and was close to the Tao requital realm. In short, it was something that had nothing to do with Li Changshou. The paper dolls conjured hand seals, hid behind a tree, and began to execute the earth escape. The sound of a chanting sutra came with the wind and reached the paper doll's ears and Li Changshou's heart. He heard the sutra being chanted. With great aspirations to validate the supreme Tao, it is the enlightenment of the West. The Western school? The paper dolls conjured hand seals a little faster. As soon as a few ripples appeared on the ground in front of them, the paper dolls couldn't wait to get into it. They ran even faster than before. At the same time, Li Changshou's original body on the deserted island also stood up and cast an illusion spell to transform into a fish, which headed straight towards the east. The Western school caused great karma, so what was he waiting for if he wasn't going to leave this place? Unexpectedly, this was still the southwestern part of the South Continent, which was very far away from the Aparagodania continent. Yet, the Western school had already come here to collect incense offerings. However, as Li Changshou was about to retreat, his immortal sense suddenly captured something strange in the seawater in the southeast direction. About 80 kilometers away, there was a dense cloud of demonic aura that was now swimming in the direction of the precious shining light. Li Changshou immediately stopped and fell into the bottom of the sea, doing his best to conceal his tracks. He stopped the paper dolls, which were still traveling underground as well, and they stayed still. Was a sea demon attracted to the precious light of the village? This is not a good thing. After carefully observing it, the cultivation level of the great demon in the sea was equivalent to a cultivator at the early stage perfected immortal realm. The body wrapped in the demonic aura was a big, odd-looking fish, which was somewhat similar to a manta ray. However, its body was larger and more than 1,000 feet in length and width. If he considered that the other party was concealing its cultivation level, it was probably around the late-stage perfected immortal realm. Under the rich demonic aura, this demon's body was also wrapped around a wisp of sanguine glow, which was like flames. This was a sign that this creature was vicious, and its karmic hindrance had taken shape due to its sins. Li Changshou's heart was pounding. Of course, it wasn't that he had any special preference for such a strange, bizarre object. It was purely because he was attracted to the power of the negative karma on this great demon. Removing such a thick negative karma would earn him a lot of merits. Should I kill this great demon at the same time? Li Changshou's heart was racing with thoughts. After immortal ascension, his foundation was too weak, and he didn't have many treasures. Merits were a good thing, and quite rare. If he locked himself in the sect to cultivate, and did not do good deeds that contributed to heaven and earth stability, he would not get a single one for hundreds of years. If he was a ruthless person who was dedicated to validating the Tao with power, he would have to avoid being blessed with merit, thus ensuring that the later stages would not be influenced by the heavenly Tao. However, Li Changshou didn't have such lofty aspirations, and the problem he was considering was practical. If there were more merits to protect him, he would be safer as well. If he could obtain great merits in the future, he wouldn't follow the elders' example of cultivating Dharma treasures. Instead, he would first create a golden body of merit. A golden body of merit was equivalent to having a gold token for a death penalty exemption. There was no need to be too afraid no matter what calamities he would encounter. At that time, even if a saint were to forcefully hit him, he would have to hesitate whether to lose several times the merit power of the golden body of merit. Of course, the golden body of merit was extremely difficult to obtain, and it required a massive amount of merit power. To this day, the heavenly Tao was becoming more perfect. There weren't many chances for him to obtain great merits. Going to the heavenly courts would be a better chance to earn merits. Li Changshou had also previously considered related matters. Let's talk about matters on hand first. Killing this great demon would certainly give a huge amount of merits. As the saying went, sand accumulates into mountains, and water drips into oceans. Everything had to have a beginning. It went as far as to get karma from the demon race. The human race and the demon race were archenemies. Even if Li Changshu was polite to the demon race, if he fell into the hands of a demon race expert one day, he would only be thrown into the deep fryer. He did not need to be polite towards the demon race. However, if he considered that the other party might have hidden their cultivation level, Li Changshu would also have to take a slight risk. This was the South Ocean and not a place for demons to gather. There was only this great demon's demonic aura within a radius of 1,000 kilometers, and there was an island with just random little demons. Now that Li Changshu had succeeded in evolving the water escape and earth escape, it was no problem traveling 50,000 kilometers in a day. After he killed that thing, Li Changshu would immediately run away and hide in the mortal world. He did not need to be afraid of other demons taking revenge on him. Moreover, he had the ability to stop it while ensuring his own safety. However, watching this big fish demon kill the people from his fellow race was a bit unreasonable. After all, he had gone through 2 lifetimes. Despite Li Changshu wondering whether the people from the Xiong village were from the same race as him, he held reservations. With the mindset of giving it a try, Li Changshu cast the water escape and was 10 times faster than that great demon. He quietly rushed to a sea region 50 kilometers from the shore. Except for the 3 schools immortal sects, most of the escape techniques in the primordial world were quite hard to find. Nowadays, valuing treasures over spells was prevalent in the cultivator community, causing many to belittle the escape technique's role. After predicting the great demon's route, Li Changshu's robe sleeves shook, and 6 paper dolls flew out from his sleeves, transforming into men and women with different looks, figures, and aura. The 6 paper dolls immediately got busy at the bottom of the sea and began to quietly set up a trapping array suitable for casting in the water. The precious umbrella was useless for the time being, and hadn't been upgraded yet. Li Changshu retreated towards the shore, met up with the paper dolls hidden underground, put the paper dolls away, and then found a forest by the sea to hide. He closed his eyes and put his heart into the rustling of leaves in the wind within a radius of 50 kilometers. A moment later, huge waves surged on the sea 50 kilometers away. A circular array appeared on the surface of the sea, trapping this giant wave directly. The 100-meter-long demon didn't notice the ambush and crashed into the temporary trapping array. Then, it noticed that something was wrong and immediately started jerking. The 6 paper dolls had appeared from all over and rushed to the demon's surroundings, each sprinkling several bottles of poisonous powder, and using their immortal powers to adhere to the great demon's body. In a split second, the seawater around the demon became turbid. The demon's body was corroded, and its soul was severely damaged. Who are you guys? This time, Li Changshu had sacrificed the last 2 bottles of transcendent-grade soft immortal disperser. Although this great demon had a higher Dao cultivation realm, it was significantly less resistant to medicine than the second prince of the Eastern Ocean Dragon Palace that he had encountered previously, and his actions immediately became incomparably slower. Li Changshu was highly tense. After the 6 paper dolls had finished scattering the poisonous powder in their hands, each of them held a sword and charged forward in a crisscross manner. A talisman, which was established by the immortal light, also appeared in the sea. The sword array and the true Samadhi flames had shown their power at the same time. The talismanic array was like chains, locking this great demon in all directions. The talismanic power erupted, sealed, electrocuted, froze, roasted, and so on. The demon body, which had been mostly corroded by the poisonous powder, had lost much of its defensive power. 6 strokes of the immortal sword wrapped in true Samadhi flames sliced through, and the great demon's body immediately had 6 more intersecting cracks. Wisps of true Samadhi flames penetrated the cracks everywhere and ignited using this demon's essence, chi, and spirit as fuel. The huge fire wrapped around this great demon in the sea in the blink of an eye, but the latter couldn't utter any screams. Among the trees on the shore, Li Changshu clenched his left fist while the 6 paper dolls each held fire swords and rushed into each part of this demon's body. Within the array wall, the flame burst forth in the seawater. The surface of the sea exploded into columns of water, and several pieces of the wrecked body wrapped in the true Samadhi flames rose into the sky. The demon's soul was locked in midair by long chains of talismanic arrays and was directly engulfed by the true Samadhi flames. Li Changshu cast the 5-element escape technique, from wood escape to earth escape and water escape. His figure rushed towards the place where the trapping array was. When he arrived in the array, 3 paper dolls were sitting in a lotus position on the sea's surface and chanting the Salvation Sutra, the Rebirth Mantra, and the Blessing Mantra. The 3 paper dolls disposed of the poisonous powder remaining in the seawater and opened their mouths to suck the polluted seawater and indestructible flames into their stomach for recycling later on. The true Samadhi flames were really fierce. In 10 minutes, the great demon's huge body was already nothing more than a puddle of ashes on the surface of the sea. Li Changshu got out of the water, and a question suddenly popped in his mind. The power of true Samadhi flames was too strong. If he needed to use it for alchemy within the sect and a bystander suddenly asked him how his true Samadhi flames cultivation was coming along, wouldn't that be? It was time to figure out how to reduce the power of this true flame. It would be best if the power was controllable and could be adjusted at will. Li Changshu threw out the soul-bewitching pearl. As his sleeve robe lifted, the pile of ashes and seawater was taken into his palm, clumped into a ball of water, and thrown into the air before exploding apart lightly. It was unexpectedly somewhat relieving. As the chanting continued, Li Changshu gripped the soul-bewitching pearl and checked the remnant memories inside. Well, this great demon really wasn't from the South Ocean. It originally lived in the West Ocean. There weren't many powerful people among their ancestors. The demon race deep in the ocean had been unable to help themselves up due to the lack of luck. This fish demon had killed countless people, and countless fishermen had been buried in their hands. He was killing it on behalf of the heavens. A ray of golden light suddenly flew up on the sea's surface and entered Li Changshu's arm. Li Changshu was suddenly flooded with a small amount of enlightenment, feeling that his own Tao had additional protection, and his quest for longevity seemed to have become slightly smoother. This was merit. By rough estimation, probably by killing a few millions of these murderous demons, he would be able to condense the golden body of merit. Or he should forget it. It was nice to stay in the mountains without going out. Eh? Li Changshu furrowed his brows as he saw something strange in the thing's memory fragments. It had snuck an attack on the village, pretended to be repulsed by a clay statue, and returned to the sea to lurk. Then, it had snuck an attack on other villages, pretended to be repulsed by clay statues, and returned to the sea to lurk. The corner of Li Changshu's mouth couldn't help but twitch. The chanting had just ended, and he immediately packed up his paper dolls, Dharma treasures, and storage sacks. He did not recycle the array base. He hastily destroyed the array, cast illusion techniques, and illusion spells, and madly executed the water escape towards the east. This great demon was from the Western school. It was with those preachers in Xiong village. They first propagated the essence of the Western school there, waited for the demon to sneak and attack, used the clay statue to pretend to repel the demon, and revealed the miracle. Thus, they reaped a harvest of a group of die-hard believers to provide incense offerings for the Western school. This scheme was certainly contemptible. However, Li Changshu was not so righteous to debunk this matter and did not want to have anything to do with the Western school. The 2 saints of the West, who loved to send people westward, were also plotting to confer the gods. Many of the unnecessary conflicts between the Tao sects before and after the God Conferment tribulation had been plotted by these 2 saints. After the God Conferment, Laozi had turned the barbarians into Buddhas with one hand and forced the Western school to become a Mahayana Buddhist sect. It was a matter of propaganda. The 5 saints had been involved. The Zenith Heaven Golden Immortal had only been a pawn in this game of chess that the saints were casually playing with, let alone a small immortal like him, who had just passed through tribulation transcendence. I can't afford to provoke them. I should quickly slip away. Li Chengshou used the water escape and earth escape alternatively to the east as fast as lightning. He originally thought that he was already at the limit of 50,000 kilometers per day, but he didn't expect that he had exceeded that in half a day. He still had the potential after being frightened. After Li Chengshou went ashore, he found a place to do a touch-up on his makeup and got all the physical disguises and magical disguises ready. This time, Li Chengshou transformed into a weak scholar and rushed towards the northeast. His right hand hiding in his sleeve grasped onto the soul-bewitching pearl as he scrutinized this large demon's fragmented memories. Not long after, he actually found some more useful information. Li Chengshou even heard of the 3 schools' immortal sects right in the middle of a conversation about them, which was spoken by someone else to this great demon. When Li Chengshou fled 25,000 to 30,000 kilometers outside the Xiong village, a group of strong men and women were bored and yawned while watching these people on the platform jumping around. These cultivators were also a bit puzzled and constantly communicated with their eyes. Theoretically, their boss should have appeared. Why was there no sight of him? Had their boss overslept? Had he gotten the place wrong? This prayer dance had been danced 3 times, and the simple villagers below had grown tired of watching it. Ahem! The old Taoist priest coughed and stopped the chanting. He first shook his head and then shouted in an odd tone. If you believe in God, you can be protected by them. You are invulnerable. Wan Kai, come demonstrate for everyone. The young man who had been chosen agreed to it. Immediately, he secretly was able to put a talisman on himself and knelt in front of the clay statue to offer incense. A golden light then appeared in front of his chest and on his back. This talisman was called the Vajra talisman, which was considered a relatively early-stage talisman. It naturally had no problem resisting the weapons in the mortal world. However, the young disciple took half a step forward and was just about to follow the process of calling out for 1 or 2 people to come up and slash him with the blade. As far as his eye could see, his thoughts gathered, and his heart pounded wildly, signaling madly. When looking at the field, the humanoid creature seemed so strong that it was unbelievable. Wan Kai's entire body was gradually engulfed by shadows, and the corners of his mouth twitched a few times. Suddenly, he found a young lady with swollen eyes and looked rather cute behind the group of people. He pointed at the young girl with a happy heart and said, "Young lady, can you come up here and try to slash me?" "Huh? Oh." Xiong Lingli looked up and wiped her tears. Her little face looked very pitiful. The moment she squeezed out of the crowd, Wan Kai's legs couldn't help but shiver. This was a personal habit, which was understandable. Xiong Lingli asked softly, "Do I really have to hit you?" "Yes, yes." Wan Kai turned his head to look at the second person on the team, and that old Taoist priest glared at him. Wan Kai could only agree while his mind was constantly telling him, "This young lady is just a little stronger. She's just a mortal." "Right, she's just a mortal. We are cultivators. We will not be scared."